Are you ready to beat up some Nazi scum?
Aye, aye, Captain!
I can hear you!
Aye, aye, Captain!
Oh!
Supreme victory!
So I've never made a video about Riley Dennis before because quite frankly I didn't really care. Riley is notoriously known for saying something along the lines of, if you don't want to date a trans person for simply being trans, then you're a bigot. And, you know, so basically having sexual preferences for dating and whatnot, you know, makes you a bigot. Well, excuse me, Riley, for not wanting balls in my face while I'm eating ass. Anyway, normally I just ignore all that stuff, and a lot of people make good videos about Riley. It's all been said and done. But I couldn't just skate by this video because this is a special video. This is a video where Riley is advocating for violence, Antifa violence to be specific. And that just sent me over the edge. I actually had to calm down before making this. I didn't want it to be just full of just nonsensical ranting. I wanted to just respond to this. And I still might get heated because it's very, very infuriating. But before I get into the Antifa part, I'm going to just address a little bit of the beginning of the video because she tries to give Black Lives Matter a little bit of a pass for some of the violent things that have gone on around them, and she also kind of paints the entire Unite the Right and everybody who was there as a Nazi.
There is no way to peacefully be a white supremacist. The very nature of the ideology is violent and harms people of color. Black Lives Matter, on the other hand, is an organization that states very specifically that its goals are to end violence and discrimination against black people. Their official website says, Black Lives Matter is working for a world where black lives are no longer systematically and intentionally targeted for demise.
So I've already made multiple videos talking about Black Lives Matter and the terrible ideology that it is. You know, being a part of some of the anti-white rhetoric, some of the anti-cop rhetoric, a lot of riots and responsible for retaliatory murders, all of that stuff. And, you know, you can just say that, hey, in their website that this is what it means and they condemn violence and all of this stuff, but we can do the same thing for the alt-right, for example. You can go to the alt-right's website and you can see what they're all about, and on the surface it's harmless. They're not talking about violence or anything like that, and I know you would consider these people in the alt-right Nazis. So essentially these Nazis aren't advocating for violence. There clearly are some. There are some people that absolutely want violence. They want a race war and all this shit. But as specifically as this goes, this organization, the alt-right, are not advocating for the violence that you speak of. And I'm sure you would say something like, well, their actions say something different. Just because it's on the website, it doesn't mean that that's what they're for. And that's what I'm trying to get at. Just because some of these people in Black Lives Matter and they have this nice little website saying that this is what they're for, look at their fucking actions, man. Look at what they've been a part of. Doesn't matter if you just say, I disavow this, we want nothing to do with this stuff, but then people that are in your ideology and your organization keep doing shit like that. Proof's in the pudding. And as far as calling everybody a Nazi there at the Unite the Right rally is just not true. Sure, there was a lot of white nationalists, a lot of neo-Nazis, a lot of KKK members. There was a lot of trash there. Don't get me wrong. But there was a lot of people there that were just all about either their stupid fucking statue or they were just about preserving the white race. And here's the thing, as much as I don't agree with that stuff, on the surface it's not inherently evil. Just wanting to preserve your people and their culture, it's not inherently evil. There are so many different people of color that want the same thing. Black people, there's Asian people, doesn't fucking matter. A lot of people want the same thing, and a lot of them argue that point that, hey, how come it's okay when these people do it? And we'll say to the contrary that, well, when you people do it, there's been results like, say, Nazism. But it's very unfair to just call everybody a Nazi that wants something like that, because then we would also have to say that people having the same type of mentality are inherently evil too, and we know that's not true. Where I don't agree with any of that shit, I'm not down for identity politics, I don't care about that stuff, doesn't affect me in any way, shape, or form. You know, obviously I don't want anybody genocided, but I don't really care about just screaming about my race this, my race that, and all this stuff. It's not for me. But let's just be real about this and not just completely paint everybody as a fucking Nazi that has that sort of rhetoric. But now I want to get into the worst part of the video where Riley Dennis is defending these anarcho-commie scumbags, the Antifa.
And in regards to anti-fascists, they're harder to pin down because they're not an organization with leaders like Black Lives Matter. But I will say this, violence against fascists is not the same as violence used by fascists. Anti-fascism is not fascism.
Now I and people that have lived through fascism throughout history are going to have to disagree with you on that point. Another relevant quote by an Italian writer named Ennio Flaiano. In Italia, I fascisti si dividono in due categorie, I fascisti e gli antifascisti. Which translates to, in Italy, there are two types of fascists. Fascists and anti-fascists. And does that not hold so true to what's been going on after all the protests and the riots for Trump and Milo and stuff?
Oh, sick burn.
If someone tries to kill you and the only way you can protect yourself is to be violent towards them, you have every right to do so. Now that's easy to see in an individual scenario. If someone pulls a gun on you, you can feel justified fighting back. But on a large-scale societal level, that violence against you can be as simple as calling for your eradication. You can argue all day that words are not violence, but the Holocaust didn't pop up out of nowhere. It started with words.
I'm sorry, Riley, but words aren't violence. That's just not how it works. Now, if you threaten somebody's life, absolutely, you can be arrested for it. That's illegal. This is the type of rhetoric you hear from people that want hate speech to be against the law or something like that, because they think that it can lead to horrible things. And yes, certain rhetoric has led to horrible things, like Nazism has led to things like the Holocaust, but we can't just arrest people, we can't just fight people just because of thought crimes. We can't do things like that. We have things like freedom of speech, and freedom of speech protects unpopular opinions, and what we're supposed to do is combat bad ideas with good ideas. What we don't do is use that as a justification to fight them. And that is what you're advocating for, and I absolutely detest that in every sense of the matter.
If you let people preach their genocidal bullshit as if it's normal and acceptable, they will grow. The people of Nazi Germany who let the Holocaust happen were not inherently more bigoted than any Americans are today. They were just swayed by convincing rhetoric. People today still have the ability to be swayed by fascist rhetoric, and that leads to mass violence. So in terms of large-scale societal violence, fighting fascism is self-defense.
Yes, Riley, we all know what happened in the past as far as Nazism go. Hollywood, everybody reminds us at every step of the way. Some terrible stuff. We have museums, we have all these things to let people know and to make sure that we do not let something like this happen again. But here's the thing, like I said before, these people that are preaching similar rhetoric, we can't just beat them up because they're saying horrible shit. That's against the law. That's not how we act in a civil society. And I also want to challenge you with something, because you're defending these Antifa, these anarcho-commie scumbags. And I want to know, I genuinely want to know, do you know anything about what has happened through communism throughout history? How many people have died under communist regimes? I mean, we can just talk about Stalin, for example. We talk about Mao Zedong. We can talk about what happened in Cambodia. We can go on for a long time in a lot of countries that have been under communist regimes and the horrible living conditions and how many people have just died through democide. And we can even talk about genocide if we want to. A lot of horrible stuff, and a lot of these people are advocating that, and you're giving them a pass. You're giving them a pass because you need to fight fascism. But they're just as fucking bad. They really are. And you need to see that. You need to see that siding with scumbags to fight scumbags is not the answer. Like I said before, we need to combat bad ideas with good ideas. And I think that it's a really good idea to advocate for non-violence and not just punch people because you disagree with them.
It is violence, but it is violence meant to protect marginalized people. Committing violence against someone because they are black or Jewish or Muslim or Mexican or trans or gay or whatever, that is unacceptable and prejudiced. But committing violence against someone to stop them from committing violence against a marginalized group, that's justified.
They're called hate crimes if that shit happens. But here's the thing, those people that are speaking and saying all that horrible shit is not a fucking crime. I'm sorry, it's not a crime. If it were a crime, yeah, a lot of these people would have been in jail a long time ago. Here's the thing, man. I already talked about it. Freedom of speech. We have it. As much as you don't like it, clearly, it's a thing. And I will defend freedom of speech. And like I said before, and I'll say it again, I will combat bad ideas with good ideas. I will not stoop to the level of these Antifa scumbags and try to fight these people because, number one, it's illegal, and number two, it solves nothing.
Now, violence against fascists and Nazis might be illegal, but what's legal is not always what's right. There is such a thing as good trouble. Activists have a long history of breaking the law to do what is right, and it's hard to argue that stopping fascism in its tracks is not the right thing to do. Plus, there's an argument to be made that what the Nazis in Charlottesville were doing was not protected by the First Amendment. In 1942, in Chaplinsky versus New Hampshire, the Supreme Court ruled that fighting words are not protected under the First Amendment. And I think you can make a strong case that Nazi slogans and homophobic and racist slurs are fighting words.
Riley, what are you thinking? You're just straight up advocating for violence. You're just covering for people and activists of the past. Yeah, some activists have been a part of civil disobedience. I don't think there was anything wrong with that. But I've not seen anybody say, hey, beating up people just because you've been wronged is good. I've never seen that before. The only people I'm seeing that from are people like you and people like Antifa. And you guys are fucked in the head. As shitty as slogans like blood and soil and Jews will not replace us and calling people faggots and stuff like that, as dumb as I think that stuff is, I'm not gonna call those things fighting words. You don't just fucking fight people because they say horrible things. I really want to get that in your head, Riley. I really hope you're watching this and you understand that being called terrible things does not call for violence. And Riley, there's a point that I really want to drive home. Back in 1977, there was a Supreme Court case, the National Socialist Party of America versus the Village of Skokie, or called the Skokie Affair, where it was a problem about freedom of speech and freedom of assembly, where these Nazis wanted to march with their Nazi flags, the swastika, and people were saying that it's against the First Amendment and it'd be fighting words. And the Supreme Court ruled in favor of freedom of speech, saying that this is not fighting words and they are allowed to do this because it protects unpopular things. That's what it's for. So as much as you don't like it, this still stands.
And on top of that, it's evident that those Nazis were not there to peacefully protest anything. They were carrying shields and guns and torches and wearing helmets. There's nothing peaceful about that. They were ready for a fight and they were happy to incite one. By saying that there was violence on many sides or that anti-Nazi violence is the same as Nazi violence, you're just making excuses for Nazis.
Okay, so from the very beginning, these Antifa scumbags have been showing up to all these different rallies, even pro-Trump rallies, just straight up having nothing to do with white nationalism, but happen to be pro-Trump. They've been showing up in all of this gear, showing up with all of these weapons and beating people up. And then after a while, some of these people on the right are starting to get pissed off and they started dressing up with shields and all this dumb shit. Yeah, after a while, people are going to start trying to protect themselves too. Yeah, there were some people that did show up ready to fight because they knew those Antifa scumbags were going to be there. You need to start really paying attention to these idiots because a lot of this violence would not be there whatsoever. Like seriously, you have to ask yourself, would any of that bullshit that happened in Charlottesville would have happened if the Antifa scum would have just went the fuck home? You know what would have happened? A lot of people would have ridiculed these fucking idiots, these white nationalists, these fucking KKK members, these neo-Nazis, the people with the fucking tiki torches. We would have laughed at them. We would have went, go the fuck home, dude. You guys are fucking ridiculous. But all you guys are doing is giving them a reason to be mad. You're giving them a reason to come back stronger. You're giving them a reason to grow their numbers because look what's happening. They're feeling marginalized. They're feeling there's a problem with them, they have issues, and nobody's fucking listening to them. They're only getting fucking fought. Now just imagine how you would feel if somebody were acting like that towards you. If you had some type of grievance, you had some type of issue, and then people, all they were doing was just fucking fighting you. How would you act? Seriously, how would you act?
We haven't seen the last of these white supremacists. They will be back and they will try to deflect blame onto the people who oppose them.
We haven't seen the last of these Antifas. They will be back and they will try to deflect blame on the people that are trying to oppose them. You see how easy that is?
Small pockets of anti-fascist violence are in no way comparable to an ideology that promotes the eradication of entire groups of people.
So it's clear to me that you're threatening violence against Nazis and people that you suspect to be Nazis or white supremacists. Now let me ask you this question. If a Nazi were to attack you because, you're threatening violence against them, they beat you to a pulp, would that make you change your point of view? Would that make you change your perception? Would that make you change your ideology? Or would it strengthen your resolve? Would it make you stronger? Would it make you come back and just completely confirming everything that you know to be true? I want you to think about that because what you're doing and what these Antifa people are doing are just that. You're attacking these people. They already feel threatened, and you're just strengthening their resolve. You're making them feel like their ideology is much more important. It makes them want to come back much harder. Things keep getting escalated to the point where, yeah, somebody fucking died at the last rally. It was fucking horrible, man. This shit does not need to happen. And you think that your violence is helping? You think that violence from the Antifa is fucking helping? No! That shit wouldn't have happened if those piece of shit scumbags weren't there. Seriously, as much as you don't want to hear that, that's the fucking truth, man. That is the absolute truth. When people show up on both sides ready to fucking fight, yeah, somebody might get killed. Straight up. But you have to wonder, you have to dig back to the origins. Why are these people on the right showing up to fucking fight? Were they showing up to fight before? These people have been around for a long time. You talk about systemic racism. You talk about all this stuff. You know the KKK's existing. You know there's neo-Nazi parties. You know there's all this shit that exists. Have you heard about all of this violence and all this bullshit happening before? No. And you may think that Trump is the reason why these people are all coming up. But the real truth is that all of the anti-white rhetoric that's been happening, all the bullshit that's been happening is giving these people a reason to grow in numbers. I mean, just look at this person. Look at this shit. Can you imagine if somebody was wearing something like this that said fuck black people? How do you think that would go over? But here's the thing. Shit like this has been accepted in modern day. Shit like this, anti-white rhetoric is accepted, and these people are pissed off. And people like you are helping them. You're helping them be pissed off. And we're getting nowhere. Things are getting much worse. You advocating for violence is making things infinitely worse. Now I want to leave you with this. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. Powerful words by Martin Luther King Jr. and something that you should really listen to.